By the merit of Moshe Rabbeinu, by the merit of this gathering of friends, please bring us some good news. Ashrechem, Ashrechem, happy may Israel be. Zechutei Toreh Moshe, Zechutei Jameh Chaverim, Bar Marisan Besora, Azomadane Yeshua, Ashrechem, Ashrechem, Ashrechem Yisrael, Ashrechem, Ashrechem, Ashrechem Yisrael.
Tishmei Yeshua, Aoba Hayati Barorim, Barmaresan Besora, Azomadana Yeshua, Ashrechem, Ashrechem, Ashrechem Yisrael, Ashrechem, Ashrechem, Ashrechem Yisrael. Hashirim Asher Lishlomo, Ashrei, Asher, Ashrei, Hashirim Asher Lishlomo, Ashrechem, Ashrechem, Ashrechem Yisrael, Ashrechem, Ashrechem, Ashrechem Yisrael, Ashrechem, Ashrechem, Ashrechem Yisrael, Ashrechem, Ashrechem, Ashrechem Yisrael. Thank you very much. Welcome, welcome. It's nice to see everyone here tonight to remember, to renew, and to reimagine Hebrew College. I'm Andy Alpha, Chair of the Board of Trustees. Thank you. I want to especially welcome our esteemed elected officials here with us tonight, U.S. Congressman Jake Auchincloss, the State Representative Kay Kahn, and our own Newton Mayor Ruth Ann Fuller. So thank you for coming. We're thrilled to have you here. So we would not be here tonight if it wasn't for the dedicated and enthusiastic team at Hebrew College that made all this possible. Rosa Frank, Wendy Linden, Dina Knopkin, Mia Taven, and Marilyn Stern. Wow, you are a team. Thank you very much. And to our honorees, my fellow board members, Jack Eiferman, Deb Feinstein, and Myra Musikant. The honor tonight is well deserved. I cannot thank you enough for your support of Hebrew College and of me. Howard Cohn, you're like a board member in your endless dedication and perseverance toward building our new home. And Isabel, Karen, Paul, and Pam, I'm not sure whether you thank Howard or curse him for getting you involved in this, but I'm glad he did. And to Mark Atkins and Miho Sato, I say a giant thank you and welcome back, welcome home. And then finally, to my friend and partner, Hebrew College President Rabbi Sharon Cohn-Anisfeld. I would not want to be in this storm-tossed boat with anyone else but you, so thank you. Tonight's gala is the culmination of a year of activities in which Hebrew College celebrated 100 years of Jewish learning and leadership. This was a year we sold our building, a year in which we paid off all of our debt and became cash positive and sustainable for the first time in 2 decades. A year when we raised over $13 million in a capital campaign, and of course, a year in which we began construction on our new home. This year, this night, we remember the first 100 years, we renew our energy, financial position, and academic programs, and reimagine the Hebrew College for the next 100 years. Remember, renew, reimagine. Thank you for being here. So now I'd like to welcome to the Bima Rabbi Dr. Dan Judson and Dr. Jonathan Sarna.
It's an old Jewish joke, but what does it mean when a rabbi takes out his watch? Nothing. I have the great pleasure tonight. First, thank you, Andy, so much, and thank you to everybody who has put this evening together so beautifully. I have the great pleasure now of introducing a person and introducing a book. So I want to introduce the book first, and then I'll introduce the person. The book, for show and tell, is a new book just put out by Hebrew College for its anniversary. It's called Chidushim, Celebrating Hebrew College's Centennial. The editors are Michael Fishbane, Art Green, and Jonathan Sarna. And the managing editor was Hebrew College faculty member Rabbi Shani Rosenbaum. It's a book that celebrates the different facets of Hebrew College. It has a section devoted to the institution, an essay on the history of the college, reflections and memories on the college. It has a series of essays by scholars who are connected to the college concerning Jewish thought, literature, and history. And the last section is a group of essays in the area of Jewish education, which has been a focus of the college throughout its history. And I want to commend the book to anybody interested in the college, Jewish scholarship, Jewish education, or all three. With that, I've introduced the book. Now I get to introduce the person. With enormous kavod, with enormous honor, I want to introduce Dr. Jonathan Sarna. I have the great privilege of calling Jonathan my teacher. Jonathan is the university professor and the Joseph Bell Braun Professor of American Jewish History at Brandeis, where he also somehow directs the Schusterman Center for Israel Studies. He was the past president of the Association for Jewish Studies and is the chief historian for the National Museum of American Jewish History. I could go on. This could be the entire 15 minutes of Jonathan's biography. I'm going to skip it all and say Jonathan is a graduate of Hebrew College, is a friend of Hebrew College. I keep asking Jonathan to do things, and he keeps saying yes, like tonight. He cares deeply about the college. So with that as an introduction, Jonathan and I are going to be talking about reflect briefly on 3 essential aspects of the college history. Its connection to Israel, its connection to Jewish culture, and its commitment to the creation of Jewish leaders. And we called this talk, V'shinatim levanecha, you shall teach your children, because Jonathan had a memory that banner was hanging in the previous Hebrew College building, emblazoned with that quote. And I think it well sums up the mission of these many years. So with that, Jonathan, I'm going to ask you to reflect on the college's connection to Israel as a core element.
Well, first let me say what a pleasure and privilege it is to be here. And indeed, I spent 8 years at the Hebrew College, 4 at the Prosdorf, 4 at the college. So I consider the Hebrew College very much part of my life. And indeed, I'm second generation in the sense that my mother was the associate librarian and really spent a lot of time here. But before we go in, if we're talking about Vishinantam Levanecha, I want to tell you, and most people don't know it, the person who did more in Boston to do Vishinantam Levanecha, and I'm one of the people who he brought in, was Mr. Kraft's father, Harry Kraft, who taught all of us and was an astonishing figure who reminds us what it means to pass Jewish knowledge from one generation to the next. And I had to say that, so thank you for being here. Now, the question is the tie of the Hebrew College to Israel. On the one hand, we didn't have a trip to Israel in my years when I was here, and we probably didn't, I don't remember even a course called Israel Studies. But we learned Hebrew. It was called Hebrew Teachers College in those days for a reason. And there was a deep cultural tie to Israel. There was, in addition, a sense that this Hebrew language that was so very important and culture would link us to Jews everywhere and in Israel. I remember, maybe there are a few others here who remember, when David Ben-Gurion came and spoke at Hebrew Teachers College. He spoke in Hebrew, and he wanted to make a point that he would show up then on Hawes Street in order to underline a tie between Israel and the Hebrew College. And indeed, many Israeli professors would, in an era before they had somewhere to study, they had somewhere really to settle. I'm saying that wrong. In an era before they would have a place where they would teach in the diaspora, where they would go on sabbatical, they knew they could come to Hebrew College. I studied with the great literary scholar Israel Levin. He spent a year at Hebrew, then Teachers College at Hebrew College, Nurit Guvrin, and others. So there were remarkable ties, and of course, many of the faculty had ties to Israel. In other words, we absorbed a certain love of Israel. Yeah.
So we were going to touch on the Hebrew College commitment to Jewish culture. And it had it from the beginning, from the get-go. Some of my students now, rabbinical and cantorial students now, you just saw, we had amazing musicians, we have artists, we have dancers. I think some of my students now think it's radical to be a seriously learned Jewish person who dances, for example. But in the first years of Hebrew College, this is quite amazing. 100 years ago, this is what the college had as its offerings for Jewish culture 100 years ago. There was a theater where the Masada student organization put on plays by Shalom Aleichem. It had a dance troupe. It had a museum. It had a library. It had an orchestra. It had a gymnasium. It had evenings devoted to Hebrew poetry, Zionist thinkers, rabbinic scholarship, biblical scholarship, not to mention nights devoted to history lectures or Jewish sociology. The goal of the college, in the words of its founders, was to create high standards of Jewish culture in America. Isaac Silberschlag, who was my predecessor as dean of the college, was an extraordinary scholar who wrote award-winning poetry, wrote biographies of Zionist intellectuals. And I become nervous on saying the last thing which he did, because you might imagine that the sort of intellectual development of the college has sort of moved down in who the deans are. But he translated from the original Greek, which he was a master scholar of, to Hebrew, the plays of Euripides, for which he won the Tel Aviv Prize. There's been a slight, I would say, decline in the intellectual quality, but let's not dwell on that. I found a speech of his, this is an extraordinary speech, where he said that Hebrew College reflected from its very beginning a thorough commitment to Jewish culture. And he asked the question, what does the word culture mean? Being a scholar of Latin, among other things, he knew that the word culture is a derivative of the Latin word colere, which means to till or to improve one's field or garden through labor. Actual farming explores, he said, the potential of the earth. Intellectual farming explores the potential of the universe. And this, he said, and I would say, is what Hebrew College has been doing for many years, exploring the potential of the universe through its commitment, its broad commitment to Jewish culture. Jonathan, I'm going to ask you to speak a little about Hebrew College's commitment to raising Jewish leadership.
It's impossible to speak only a little about that. One could list, and in the volume you will see the famous scholars who came through Hebrew College, a whole generation of Jewish scholars. But in many ways, beginning, by the way, with Ben Halpern, my teacher, and Isidor Tursky, and Arnold Band. And of course, our friend Professor Paula Hyman of blessed memory, who always cited the role of the Hebrew College and who herself contributed to the Hebrew language and was so proud of that precisely because she had learned Hebrew here. But we would make a mistake if we thought that the contribution of Hebrew College was just in training up scholars. Its contribution was in raising an educated, Jewishly educated laity here in Boston, a sense of a Jewish world where, this is a true story, the attorney of Warren Buffett, who was a Prose Door graduate, also knew how to study and knew Hebrew and really was very proud of what that allowed him to do in his community when he moved from Boston to Omaha. I'm referring to my great friend, the late Forrest Crutter, and so many others. Mr. Kraft also studied at the Prose Door, and to see what he accomplished, yeah, and so many others in Boston. That's what helps make Boston unique, was the fact that there was a Hebrew college that allowed people to learn what Jewish civilization was about, even as they pursued leadership across not only New England, but ultimately across the world.
Thank you, Jonathan. I want to thank you for your friendship for the college, for your editing of the book, and we continue with our program. Please join me in celebrating tonight's honorees as we watch them on the big screen.
I feel blessed to be honored by Hebrew College in their centennial year. 100 years, can you imagine? 100 years. And I see a little cycle here because my mother went to Hebrew College. It was called Hebrew Teachers College at that time. And now I graduated from the master's program in Jewish Studies. I'm an adult learner. I might have graduated a while ago, but every week I take many classes. Hebrew College does that. They're able to have places and teaching environments for adults to learn. We are able to grow and expand our horizons, turn things in and out, re-examine things. It's really exciting how we can explore and find new ways of seeing. With my committee, we established the Arts Initiative, and now we have a gallery, and it's all about our permanent collection and the collection of contemporary artists that have studied in the school, who are rabbis, who are affiliated with the school. It's very exciting because their backgrounds, they might all study here, but their backgrounds are from Israel and Poland and South Africa and Argentina, and we all come together and we can sit and look at how people show their love of Torah.
When Rabbi Sharon accepted the position of president in 2018, she was given the keys to a nearly bankrupt organization, except there were no keys. 4 years later, we're in the midst of creating a new campus for the college. We started with a very classic mid-century suburban temple. To this existing temple, we added a bit of otherwise worthless land. And not to be forgotten, the college donors added $12 million in cash. I want to offer my everlasting thanks to the amazing professional team that signed up for this barn-raising challenge. They're clearly a Carnegie Hall quartet of wizards. Penn Goodman, my working partner for 40 years on development. Paul Bouton on the law. Karen Dubrovsky and David Schlinsky on architecture. And Jim Matrano and Isabella Runa on construction. You guys made this happen.
My involvement at Hebrew College is a natural outgrowth of my interest in and commitment to Jewish education. From an early Maya course at TBZ to numerous post-Maya classes, I have participated in many Hebrew College programs over the years. The college, in partnership with CJP, plays a pivotal role in providing adult education opportunities for our community. It is a role I value immensely. The Rabbinical School, a newer addition to the Hebrew College mission, has proven to be a great benefit to Jewish communities across the country as graduates take positions in Hillels, synagogues, and other Jewish institutions. I am proud to be supporting Hebrew College, an institution with a long reach and lasting impact. The entire Jewish community is greatly enriched by all that you do.
I attended a modern Orthodox elementary school in Brooklyn, New York, the Yeshiva of Flatbush. Among other things, we learned that the Torah was written by Moses as dictated by God. Imagine my dislocation a few decades later when in my first Hebrew College adult education class, I learned that the Torah was written by real flesh and blood human beings. But there was an elegance to that perspective, a truth to it. Now, it wasn't the truth. It was a truth that made sense and resonated right along with the truths of traditional Jewish practice. I realized that the college was committed to educating Jews in the United States in the 21st century. But the college did teach extensively about the views, history, philosophy, and perspectives of those prior generations. For me, the college's educational mission embraces that 3,000-year-old legacy, but it does so with a critical eye. I've been able to support the college's mission by drawing on my skills and experience in the business and legal worlds. It's been a real opportunity to be able to support the college, and I feel honored to be able to do so.
I was born and grew up in Japan in a Buddhist family. Through Mark, I became curious about Judaism and its culture. Because my musical background, I have learned lots of Jewish songs, and then I started to see the world differently. Mark is very spiritually connected to his Jewish and its principles, and he's very thankful to Hebrew College for the role it has played in his life.
And talking about that, I guess I would start with where did it all begin as far as my affiliation with Hebrew College? Well, believe it or not, and I still am somewhat incredulous myself, it goes back over 6 decades. When I was 12 years old, I was one of the youngest along with Rabbi Korf, Rabbi Ira Korf, the Grand Rebbe, that entered into the pros doors first class in 1960 at 12, both of us. I think what the college inspired me to try to be, and I'm still endeavoring to reach this goal, is to be a mensch. What was it that one had to do or comport himself as in order to be classified as a true mensch? Which to me, at that time, and still is the ultimate compliment. I learned that, to go back to the 3 familiar words that resonate and have been with me for these years, these decades, I've learned tefillah, teshuva, and tzedakah. Those are the 3 things that are constantly reinforced in my mind as the ways, the venue towards menschkeit. Hebrew College to me has been a beacon in my life, as I'm sure, and I've seen from my various capacities as a volunteer, it's been a beacon of education and lighting the way for both young and mature minds.
Mark and Miho, Jack, Deb, Myra and Howard, we are so honored to honor all of you and to offer our blessings of gratitude and kavod. Each blessing I want to offer draws on a few words of Torah that are being rendered in Hebrew calligraphy as our gift to each of you, done by Lizzie Sivitz, a member of the extended Hebrew College community, whose artwork, I believe, you can see displayed on the screen before you somewhere. There it is, yeah. So one at a time. Mark, you first walked through the doors of Hebrew College at age 12, well below the minimum required age of 15, because of your mother's fierce devotion and determination and the promise of an ice cream sundae. But it is your own devotion and determination that has brought you back through those doors in countless leadership roles, both formal and informal, over many decades. When I became president, you were one of the first people to offer your guidance and support. And Miho, you were right there with him, welcoming me warmly into your home, offering your own wisdom and friendship with humility, humor, insight, and grace. It is so fitting that your generous leadership gift to our campaign will be reflected in a gracious atrium that welcomes people into the Hebrew College building on our new shared campus and invites them to enter the doors of Jewish learning at any age and any stage of life. Mark, you were first taught this passage from Pirkei Avot by your beloved teacher at Hebrew College, Rabbi Weider. Im ein ani li mili, וכשאני לעצמי מה אני, ואם לא עכשיו, אימתי. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? May you both continue to be galvanized by these words and guided by their urgent and enduring wisdom. Jack, You've been a dedicated leader on our Board of Trustees for a lot of years. Over the last few alone, you have played a vital role in the sale of our current campus and in the creation of our new one. And you've been an invaluable and trusted advisor and confidant to me and to Andy. Basically, this is your portfolio. Wherever and whenever things get really complicated, we count on you to be a wise and steady hand, to get to the heart of things, to handle complex tasks with both efficiency and tremendous care. You say few words, but you listen with exquisite intelligence and sensitivity. And when you speak, everyone listens carefully. Beneath it all is your huge heart and your love of Jewish learning. You're not overly sentimental, in my experience, but in a quiet moment, if one is lucky, as I have been, one can find you with a look of absolute delight on your face, perusing old prayer books in the Hebrew College library, or with tears in your eyes at the end of davening in our Beit Midrash. In Psalm 85, we read, Chesed ve'emet nifgashu, tzedek v'shalom nashaku. Kindness and truth have met. Righteousness and peace have kissed. May you continue to show us all what it looks like when deep integrity and deep kindness walk hand in hand. Deb, you embody the three verbs, values in action, that are our theme tonight and have been our theme all year: remember, renew, reimagine. You honor the memory of past generations, including your own mother, who graduated from Hebrew College in the 1930s. And you understand intuitively that creativity is at the heart of our individual and collective capacity for renewal. As an artist, you expand our understanding of Torah through stunning visual midrash. As a curator and chair of our arts initiative, you take as much, if not more, joy in sharing the work of others as you do in sharing your own. As a lover of Torah, you are an insatiable lifelong learner. I can't keep track of the number of courses you're taking at any given time, but I've had the privilege of teaching one of them, one of the study groups you've gathered, the amazing Torah Babes, for almost a decade now. It's a profound blessing in my own life. And finally, you have your eyes on the future, always. Dedicating a classroom on the new campus that will carry your family's name forward, and reimagining a planned giving program to help build our endowment, passing on the living and the life-giving legacy that was passed on to you. Eitz chaim hi lamachazikim ba. She is a tree of life to those who hold her fast. May you always be renewed through your devotion to Torah, and may Torah be renewed through you, linking you to generations past and yet to be. Myra and Howard. At our graduation ceremony this Sunday, Rabbi Tamar Elad Applebaum spoke to us from Jerusalem about the word Breshit, in the beginning, and how it contains the word bor, meaning a pit. Sometimes to create, to begin again, she said, you need to be honest about the fact that you're in a pit. Only then can you start to build ladders of light to find your way out. Myra, when I started in this role, you were generously honest with me about the fact that we were in a pit. It's a good thing when your treasurer is constitutionally incapable of sugarcoating things. This is a good thing. Knowing we were facing the challenge of finding a new home, you invited me to meet with Howard. Howard enthusiastically affirmed that we were indeed in a pit. But here's the thing. You let me know I was in a pit, but then you let me know that I wasn't there alone. Howard, once you see a problem clearly, especially a real estate problem, especially a Jewish real estate problem, you have a very strong urge to be part of the solution. You didn't just build the ladder of light, you became the ladder of light. You stepped up to chair our real estate committee, and you were all in. For your leadership, your partnership, your mentorship, I am forever grateful. You brought with you, as we've heard, an extraordinary team of professionals who we also want to recognize tonight, and I would ask if you're willing to please stand as I mention your name. Pam Goodman, unsurpassed in her knowledge, unrelenting in her realism, unstinting in her generosity. Thank you, Pam. Paul Boutin, as you heard on law, endlessly patient, even-keeled, solution-oriented, so smart. Through all this stuff I couldn't even begin to fathom. Thank you. Isabel Acuna, from Waypoint, our project manager, unfailingly disciplined, direct, and always kind. None of us wanted to show up for a meeting without having done our homework for Isabel. And Karen Dubrovsky from PCA, our talented, visionary architect who has a very strong subspecialty in pastoral care. Our deepest gratitude to all of you. Myra and Howard, thank you so much for your vision and your immense generosity in all its forms, including the creation of a new Center for the Performing Arts on our shared campus. In Masechet Tamid, we're taught, Ezehu Chacham. It's a different Ezehu Chacham. Ezehu Chacham, who is wise, Haro'eh et hanolad, the one who sees what is being born. The nolad is a newborn child, and it's also the sliver of moon in the sky at the beginning of a new month. May you continue to see new possibilities in our hands and on the horizon, and may you help all of us see them and bring them to life. And now I'd like to ask, just for a minute, all of our honorees to come up on the bima, if you're willing. Don't go anywhere. I just want to say these final words. In every wilderness, on every journey, there are those who step forward with nidivut lev, with abundant generosity of heart, to create sacred community, to build something beautiful together, to build ladders out of pits. And on behalf of the entire Hebrew College community, I want to thank you all for your abundant gifts. It is a privilege and a deep joy to be on this journey with you. Mazal tov.
Hi, everyone. My name is Susie Tanchel, and I am honored to be the Vice President of Hebrew College. To my right is Rabbi Jane Kanarak, who is the Associate Dean of the Rabbinical School and a Professor of Talmud. To my left is Or Rose, the Founding Director of the Miller Center at Hebrew College. Hi, Jane and Or.
Hi, Susie.
So I'm excited to be joining in with you both on this conversation about educating for hope across difference. Now, hope might strike some of us in this particular moment as kind of an odd choice. We, and I don't just mean the three of us, have been having a bit of a hard time lately. Events in the world, events across the United States, events more locally have been challenging, and I don't just mean COVID. In some parts, there is an attack on the process of education itself. But perhaps that is precisely why, in this very moment, we lift up our commitment to educating for hope. And I'm not thinking about a willfully blind optimism, but rather a more grounded hope. I recently read the words of Parker Palmer, who wrote, "Hope is the place where joy meets struggle." What resonates so deeply for me is the idea of a complex kind of hope. And it feels like an apt description of the educational process. When education is at its best, it's certainly about joy and struggle. What I like to call a productive disequilibrium. Just the right amount of discomfort pushes us and creates an opening, a possibility for something new to emerge. Since the verb to educate comes from the Latin educare, which means to lead out, perhaps teaching is about us leading one another out of our current place, but into an unspecified destination. Rather, we are to see what emerges. We are to trust a process as it unfolds. Across all our programs, teens and adults, clergy and educators, we share a common pedagogy of cultivating minds that seek to go deeper, of nurturing compassionate hearts that build community, and of developing attuned ears that listen to the voice of the text, the voice of Al Chavruta, and to our own inner voices. This process of complex hope, born of joy and struggle, leads to possibility and maybe even transformation.
Thank you, Susie. When we were talking about what we wanted to share, Susie gave us this quote that she mentioned: "Hope is the place where joy meets struggle." I'm not going to start there, but I'm going to circle back to hope is the place where joy meets struggle. I teach Talmud. It's a sacred text, our sacred text, and it's a text, as we all know, of multiple opinions. It's a creative book, and I want to argue that it's also a book through which hope can be taught. I'm going to move back a little further in time, though, to when I was in rabbinical school at the Jewish Theological Seminary. And I was sitting in the cafeteria, and I was talking with a friend of mine, who is now Rabbi Diane Kohler-Esses. And we were talking about the laws of Nida, the laws of menstruation. I don't remember exactly what I was saying, but I do know it was something very, very feminist and very, very angry and very, very anti these laws and whatever they were said. And at some point, Diane just sat back and said to me, "Jane, but do you ever let the text talk to you? Jane, do you ever let the rabbis talk to you?" And she stopped me in my tracks. And it has been that sentence that I have taken with me as an educator. It is how I see myself as a teacher. So what is my task? I see it as twofold. The first is to help my students learn to let our ancient texts, the text of the Talmud, speak to them from its very old, and even if I may dare so, strange place. The second task that I see myself, though, is to let my students and enable them to speak back to the Talmud with everything that they know about who they are and from the moment that we live in now. So to use the words of the anthropologist J.Z. Smith, it is to help my students make what is familiar to them strange and what is strange to them a bit familiar. This is a process of creating a two-way dialogue. It's a dialogue that creates relationship between student and Talmud and student. And then, equally crucially, it's a process that also helps to create relationships between the students. Our students are from a range of different backgrounds, different perspectives. They bring different selves to the Talmud and to the classroom. They know different things. This process isn't easy, and this is where I get to struggle. It can be a struggle, not just with the Hebrew and Aramaic of the Talmud, not just with its sometimes foreign language, and not sometimes even just with its ethically troubling texts, but it can also be a struggle to learn to listen to one another. But when they do that, when they internalize this process of dialogue with one another and with the Talmud, what I see is joy emerge. What I see is smiles in the classroom at the text and towards one another. And I hope and I trust that out of that joy also comes hope for my students, hope for being able to listen to one another, and equally important, hope that they may learn and find joy in listening to this ancient text that represents something beyond their own selves.
Amen.
In the time that I have to contribute to this conversation, I wanted to share a text. And if it's available to be shared on the screen, that would be wonderful. As you all know, on Saturday night, we will celebrate the festival of Shavuot, the celebration not only of the peak of the spring season, but also, according to tradition, the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. And for generations, interpreters have asked, what happened at Sinai? What was seen? What was heard? What was internalized? I want to share one answer from a 19th century source that has moved me, both as a student of Judaism and as a rabbi that's regularly involved in interreligious and cross-cultural work. Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Ribbenov said that the only thing that was revealed directly by God at Sinai to the children of Israel was the letter Aleph from the first word of the Ten Commandments, Anochi. But what does an Aleph sound like when it stands alone? It is, of course, pregnant with meaning, but then it is left to each and every one of us individually and communally to interpret what that Aleph means. Let's have the slide back. So then his student, Naftali Tzvi of Ropshitz, asks, if Aleph is what they heard, what did they see? And he said, my master was right. It was just an Aleph. But then he said, what can you see? What can you hear? What can you understand if you look at that Aleph anew? Deconstruct that Aleph, and you'll see two Yuds and a Vav. Two Yuds and a Vav looks a lot like a human face. So what was seen at Sinai? People looked to their left and to the right and saw each other's faces and understood that out of the depth of that Aleph of Anochi, each of us is at once interconnected, and each of us also has a unique Torah to bring forth. And so, picking up on my colleague Susie's love for mystics, I started with a Hasidic mystic, and I'll end with a Quaker mystic. But we still need the quote and the slide. The highest form of love allows for intimacy without the annihilation of difference. Thank you.
So we're each going to take just a minute to share some final thoughts. And I actually wanted to read to you from an essay that a member of our Beit Midrash, our teen Beit Midrash program, wrote in their college essay. We take out our Talmud texts and dictionaries and move closer to our Chavruta partners and begin to read. Typically, it doesn't take long before we come to our first of many disagreements. One of us argues for a literal interpretation of the text, while the other leans toward a figurative one. One of us agrees with the Talmud scholars, but the others prefer a modern reading. We each explain our differing perspectives, backing them up with historical or textual context, rabbinical commentaries, our own experiences, and even current events. We often find consensus on some questions, while agreeing to disagree on others. Fortunately, this is a teen, remember? Fortunately, uniting on one answer is not a requirement of Chavruta learning. Our goal is to learn from one another, listen to each other's perspectives, and respect and appreciate our varying options. When we achieve these goals, we not only learn more, we also form a strong community in which all voices are heard and embraced. Before joining Teen Beit Midrash, I felt alone. The students here took me under their wings, supported me, and through our shared experiences and mutual understanding, gave me a sense of belonging. This makes sense. The Beit Midrash is the perfect environment in other parts of our lives. After all, Chavruta learning centers around listening, openness, support, and respect. This transformed my life. I felt as if I belonged.
When people ask me what Hebrew College is, I say we are a laboratory for creating community across difference. That is the core of my community. Over the Talmud, I hope that my students will learn to listen to each other without arrogance, with certainty that they are right about some things, and with certainty that they are wrong about other things. If we can cultivate that sense of respect, that certainty in rightness, in wrongness, and in rightness, and learning through community, then I believe we will have done something to help this country, to help our Jewish world, and to help this country to learn how to create community across difference.
Lest you think the mystical teaching a few moments ago is simply theory, one source of hope for me was working with teens, one from Roxbury, the other from Brookline, one African-American Christian, the other white and Jewish, through our COVID commission, a moment in which, over Zoom, they had the opportunity to study as a chavruta, in which one shared with the other the realities of food insecurity and what it means to wait online for 2 hours a week to get basic necessities. And the other shared about alcoholism and his responsibility for caring for his father, who in the midst of COVID had descended into a very dark and dangerous place. In that moment, when they saw each other and heard each other, that was the Aleph of the face. That was Torah.
Thank you both so very much. I now invite you to turn your attention to the big screen as together we imagine Hebrew College's strong and vibrant future. Thank you.
So for many years, I've had a quote on the bulletin board in my office. It's a quote from the former Congresswoman, Pat Schroeder, who said, "You can't wring your hands and roll up your sleeves at the same time." One of the things that I love most about being at Hebrew College is actually how little hand-wringing there is about the future and about the Jewish future, and how much more time we spend rolling up our sleeves and creating Jewish life together with a real sense of optimism and hope and joy and creativity and imagination. So that is so much of what these last few years have been about, in particular, as we have had to reimagine the next phase of the institution as we celebrate 100 years and look towards the next 100 years. But there's something very grounding about knowing that that need for renewal is actually not new. It's not new for the institution, it's not new for the Jewish community, it's not new for the Jewish people. That's what we do, is we renew ourselves in every generation. The vision for the shared campus, I think, is very much about a vision of renewal at a time when there's a need for the Jewish community to open up new doorways, new ways in for people who haven't necessarily found their way in through some of the old models. The vision for the new campus does that.
What excites me about the new campus is that it is a place for community. I see people talking and conversing with each other, learning with each other, and I think that will be very exciting.
I'm a numbers guy, and in the theme of tonight of reimagining, I'm pleased to say, or thrilled to say, for the first time in 2 decades, that Hebrew College is debt-free, and we have raised all the money for this new home. And so after this new home, when we move in, we will have a debt-free balance sheet. We will have a model that is sustainable every year in terms of our finances. And I'm reimagining and very excited about, for the first time in a long time, Hebrew College being fully sustainable.
So we are just so honored and thrilled to be able to partner with 8 other wonderful organizations, institutions, communities. Part of what these organizations embody by coming together is such a diversity of ways into Jewish life, such a diversity of ways of bringing Jewish wisdom to some of the most pressing issues in our world, some of the most pressing needs in our lives. And every single doorway, whether it's the arts or social justice or movement and meditation or prayer and ritual, at every one of these doorways is an opportunity for deeper learning, for personal spiritual growth, and for greater connection and community.
The new campus of Hebrew College is something that I've been spending lots of time on over the course of the past few years. I've become intimately involved with it, but it's all been on paper, and I just can't wait to see it in bricks and mortar and wires and glass and people.
Mazel Tov, Hebrew College, on this 100-year milestone. Thank you for being our partner, helping to ensure that a vibrant, thriving Jewish community here in Greater Boston understands the depth and meaning that Jewish tradition has to offer and truly is a community of learners. Thank you for having the vision to bring together leaders and organizations from across this community whose impact is both local and global. We know that this new campus will not only be an example of collaboration and sustainability for our community and our entire country, but it will be a hub of continuity and creativity for our community for a vibrant Jewish future. Thank you for the vision that you're bringing to this new campus. We look forward to all it will bring to our community for generations to come. Mazel Tov.
It is such an honor to be here. And Mark, I feel as if we are in a family, community of mensches and menchettes. And congratulations to all of those who received awards tonight. I thank you, Rabbi Sharon, for sharing your story, their stories with us, so that we get to know you better. And again, congratulations. Thanks to each of you for joining us to celebrate Hebrew College at 100 years young. We hope you've been inspired as we celebrated our past, and we look forward to an exciting and expansive future. Many thanks to our student and alumni rabbis and cantors, and of course, our esteemed faculty. With much gratitude, we thank you, our beloved President Sharon Cohen-Anisfeld and Board Chair Andy Offit for your leadership, your passion, and your commitment, and we could not have done this without I am here with this beautiful group of women who are part of our campaign. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to our indefatigable leader, Nancy Belsky, who is home recovering from COVID. And I know she's with us tonight, and she's probably sipping champagne. 2 years ago, in the throes of the global pandemic, our leadership made a strategic and inspired decision to invest in this vision of hope, to join with Temple Re'im in a new and reimagined collaborative campus. With the remarkable support of so many, and so many of you here tonight, we have raised $13.3 million in 2 short years. And we are building and on the way to share this incredible campus, a vibrant hub of Jewish learning, leadership, and life. Tonight, we have a goal of $200,000 for this final phase of our campaign, but that's not all we need. This is just part of the final phase. Right, Sharon? Right. A gift of any amount will be deeply appreciated, and I just want all of you to know there are still naming opportunities on the new campus.
I'm going to try to be very, very quick. I know I'm standing between you, dessert, and the Celtics. First of all, I want you to learn the names. So I want to thank Susan, Nancy, who's somewhere up there looking at us with her COVID, Myra, Beverly, and of course, Andy, my Capital Campaign colleagues who now feel like family to me. We knew from the start that our labor of love would reap vast returns, especially under the wise leadership, grace, and strategic vision of Rabbi Sharon Annisfeld. I'm in love with her, but what can I say? And the incredible work ethic of Development Director Rosa Frank. Will you stand up? Rosa, stand up. But we owe you, our donors and friends, a deep, heartfelt sense of gratitude for your trust as partners, ensuring Hebrew College's vibrancy for the next 100 years. What a beautiful legacy for our children and their grandchildren, and on. Many, many, many thanks. Of course, the jewels in our crown are our faculty and students. These students, our future leaders, will be standing at the doorway. Actually, I think they're our next campaign cabinet. They'll be standing there with an envelope for each one of you. Return it to Hebrew College. When you fill it with your gift, be as generous as you are able. One last note, the desserts are grab and go. Please keep your masks on in the building. You may take the dessert in the bags into the tent to enjoy both food and conversation, or just take your bag home and sit in front of the TV. We love you all. Thank you. And join us with a Shehekianu moment.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu vekimanu vehigianu lazman hazeh Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Lazman